Captain Lee Hana felt the eyes of dozens of alien officers watching her ship as the UES Persistence slowly moved into its docking bay at Kepler Station. She stood straight on her bridge, hands clasped behind her back, trying to ignore the whispers, and pointing fingers visible through the massive station windows. The Persistence was not a pretty ship. Where other vessels gleamed with smooth, polished surfaces, hers looked like someone had welded together pieces from a scrapyard. Thick metal plates of different colors covered the hull, some silver, some black, some that weird brownish color. That happens when steel gets too hot. The welding lines were thick and ugly, nothing like the seamless joints on alien warships. But what really caught everyone's attention was the enormous spinning ring in the middle of the ship. It rotated slowly, constantly, like a giant wheel. Nobody could figure out what it was for. Most alien ships were sleek and elegant, designed by computers to be perfectly efficient. The Persistence looked like it had been built by someone's grandfather. In his garage, Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Navy was the first to speak up. His tall, blue-skinned form towered over the other officers, gathered in the station's observation deck. His four eyes all focused on Commander Park Min-ho, the Korean liaison officer who was supposed to help coordinate between human and alien forces. "This is humanity's finest warship?" Kethvar asked, his voice carrying clearly across the room. His tone made it sound like he was asking about a broken toy. "I have seen cargo haulers with better construction." Park Min-ho felt his face get hot, but he kept his voice steady. "The Persistence has passed all Federation inspections, Admiral. She's ready for combat duty." A ripple of what could only be described as alien laughter went through the crowd. Captain Velnara of the Crystalline Collective made a sound like wind chimes being shaken. "Ready for combat?" she asked. "It looks ready for the recycling center." The comments kept coming. Someone mentioned that human ships always looked thrown together. Another officer wondered out loud if humans even understood proper engineering. A few aliens started taking pictures with their various recording devices, probably to show their friends back home what passed for military technology among humans. On the bridge of the Persistence, Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin walked over to her captain. "Ma'am, the station communications are open. We can hear what they're saying about us." Lee Hana nodded but didn't turn away from the window. She could see the alien officers clearly, see them pointing and laughing. Her crew was getting angry. She could feel the tension building behind her. These were good people, skilled engineers and fighters who had worked hard to serve on this ship. They didn't deserve this mockery. "Let them talk," she said quietly. "Words are cheap. When the time comes, we'll show them what the Persistence can really do." But even as she said it, Lee Hana wondered if she was just trying to convince herself. The ship did look rough compared to the elegant alien vessels docked nearby. Maybe they were right. Maybe humanity really didn't belong among the stars. The first joint training exercise was supposed to be simple. 6 ships from different species would work together to destroy a series of practice targets. It should have been easy for any military vessel, worth its metal. The Persistence was not having an easy time. "Captain, the main weapons are cycling slow again," Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin called out from her station. Her fingers flew over the controls, trying to fix whatever was wrong this time. "I'm getting maybe 1 shot every 8 seconds when we should be firing every 3. Lee Hana watched through the viewscreen as a sleek Zephyrian destroyer gracefully glided past them, its energy beams lancing out in perfect rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. 3 practice targets destroyed in as many seconds. The alien ship moved like a dancer, smooth and precise. Then came their turn. The Persistence lumbered forward like an old truck, its engines making grinding noises that definitely weren't supposed to be there. When they finally got close enough to fire, the main cannon wheezed out a single shot that barely scratched the target. "Shields are fluctuating again," reported Ensign Song Minji from the defense station. "They're up to 70%, now 50, now back to 80. I can't get them to stay stable." On the communications channel, they could hear the other ships talking. The universal translators made it easy to understand what the aliens were saying about them. "Look at that human ship wobble," came a voice from the ethereal Navy vessel. "Are they drunk over there?" "Maybe their artificial gravity is broken," suggested someone from the hegemony cruiser. "That would explain why they're flying like that." Captain Lee watched Admiral Velthar's crystalline ship execute a perfect barrel roll while destroying 4 targets simultaneously. The alien vessel looked like it was made of living glass, every surface catching and reflecting light in beautiful patterns. It moved through space like it belonged there, like it had been born among the stars. The Persistence fired again. This time the shot went wide, missing the target completely. "Engineering, what's wrong with our targeting system?" Lee asked into her comm. Chief Engineer Choi Daeho's voice crackled back, full of frustration. "Everything, Captain. The computers keep arguing with each other about which target to hit. Half the sensors are giving different readings. It's like the whole ship has a headache." More laughter came through the communications. Admiral Velthar's voice was particularly clear. "Perhaps the humans would be better suited to cargo transport duties. Their ship seems more comfortable carrying things than fighting." The comment stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. During the cargo simulation, the Persistence had actually performed well. Its huge cargo bays could hold twice as much as most ships its size. But that wasn't what they were here for. Lieutenant Kim Sujin slammed her hand on her console. "Captain, permission to shut off the external communications. The crew doesn't need to hear this." "No," Lee Hana said quietly. "Let them hear it. Let us all hear it." She wanted her crew to understand what they were up against. Not just enemy ships in battle, but the assumption that humanity didn't belong out here among the stars. Every snicker, every joke, every suggestion that they should stick to hauling freight was a reminder of what the galaxy thought of them. The exercise continued, and the Persistence continued to struggle. By the time it ended, even the target drones seemed embarrassed for them. After the 3rd disastrous training exercise, Chief Engineer Choi Daeho had enough of the whispers and pointed fingers. When a group of alien officers requested a tour of the Persistence, supposedly to understand human engineering better, he knew they just wanted to see the mess up close. But maybe it was time to show them what they were really looking at. The tour group gathered in the main corridor, their various alien forms creating a colorful crowd. Captain Yoonjiwon of the Hegemony Fleet led the group, her sleek uniform and confident posture, making it clear she considered herself the expert here. Behind her came officers from 6 different species, all eager to see humanity's engineering. Failures firsthand. "This corridor looks like it was built by 5 different construction crews," observed Lieutenant Kesseral from the Zephyrian Navy, running his hand along the wall where different types of metal plates joined together. "Was there no planning involved?" Choi Daeho smiled, though it wasn't a particularly friendly smile. "Actually, there was a lot of planning. Every single plate you see can be removed and replaced in under 10 minutes. When we take battle damage, we don't need a shipyard to fix it. We just swap out the broken pieces." He led them to one section, where a panel was obviously newer than the others. "This plate was destroyed during a meteor shower last month. My crew had it replaced, and the ship back to full strength before your average alien vessel would have even finished sending a distress call." Captain Yoon Ji-won looked unimpressed. Surely proper shielding would prevent such damage in the first place. "Shields fail," Choi said simply. "Everything fails eventually. The question is what you do when that happens." They moved deeper into the ship, eventually reaching the massive spinning section that had confused everyone. The ring was enormous, taking up nearly a quarter of the ship's interior space. Strange machinery lined its walls, and the constant rotation created a low humming sound that seemed to vibrate through the entire vessel. "What exactly is this supposed to be?" asked Commander Velrath of the Crystalline Collective, his multiple eyes trying to track the spinning motion. "Kinetic weapons system," Choi replied casually. "We call it the Big Spinner. It can launch anything from tungsten rods to ball bearings at speeds that would make your energy weapons look like flashlights." The aliens exchanged glances. Energy. Weapons were the standard throughout the galaxy, clean, precise, elegant. Throwing chunks of metal at enemies seemed primitive. And this welding everywhere? Captain Yoon Ji-won gestured at the thick, ugly weld lines that covered every joint. "This looks like apprentice work." Choi knelt down and touched one of the welds. As they watched, tiny silver threads began spreading from his fingers across the metal surface. Self-repairing nanotechnology. These ugly welds contain millions of microscopic robots. When the ship takes damage, they automatically fix it. Your perfect, smooth joints can't do that. Sophisticated species solve problems with elegance, Captain Yoon Ji-won said coldly. Not with whatever this is. You're trying to make primitive. Construction sound advanced. Lieutenant Kesral nodded in agreement. My people have been building starships for over 3,000 years. We know good engineering when we see it. This looks like something built in a scrapyard. Choi Daeho's smile got wider. You know what? You're absolutely right. We did build it in a scrapyard. The best engineers in the galaxy, working with whatever materials they could find, solving problems in ways nobody else would think of. That's not a bug. That's a feature. But the aliens weren't buying it. They saw ugly welds, mismatched plates, and spinning contraptions that made no sense. To them, it looked exactly like what they expected from humans. Crude, desperate attempts to copy technology they didn't really understand. The alarm that woke everyone up at 0300 station time wasn't a drill. Long-range scout ships had been sending back data for the past 6 hours, and what they found made everyone's blood run cold. Captain Lee Hana rushed to the bridge, still pulling on her uniform jacket. Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin was already at her station, her face pale as she stared at the incoming reports. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, transferring the data to the main screen. What appeared before them looked like something out of a nightmare. 17 star systems, each one completely dark. No planets, no asteroids, no debris fields, just empty space where entire solar systems used to exist. "The Devourers," whispered Ensign Song Minji. Everyone had heard the stories, but seeing the evidence was different. These weren't raiders or conquerors, they were something far worse. They consumed everything, breaking down entire worlds to fuel their endless expansion. Fleet Admiral Thargon's voice crackled over the communication system, reaching every ship in the combined fleet. "All vessels, this is Fleet Command, long range. A reconnaissance has confirmed Devourer movement toward our position. Estimated arrival time is 14 hours. Lee Hana felt her stomach drop. 14 hours to prepare for an enemy that had never been defeated. The briefing that followed painted an even grimmer picture. The Devourer ships were perfect geometric shapes, cubes, spheres, pyramids, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls were completely black, absorbing all light and energy. But the really terrifying part was their adaptive shielding. Commander Oh Sung-hyun, the fleet's tactical coordinator, explained it during the emergency meeting. Intelligence reports indicate that Devourer shields learn from every attack. The first time you hit them with a plasma cannon, they take damage. The second time, less damage. The third time, almost nothing. After that, they're completely immune to that weapon type. Captain Yoon Ji-won leaned forward in her chair. Then we overwhelm them with variety. Every ship uses different weapons, different approaches. That's exactly what we're planning, Oh Sung-hyun replied, bringing up tactical displays. Coordinated. Strikes using 17 different weapon systems simultaneously. We hit them with everything at once, before they can adapt. The battle plan was elegant and precise, just like everything else the alien species did. Energy weapons would fire in calculated sequences. Shield harmonics would be perfectly synchronized. Every ship would know exactly when to fire, at what target, and with which weapons. It was the kind of plan that required perfect timing and flawless execution, everything the Persistence had proven it couldn't do. Fleet Admiral Thargon's next announcement surprised no one. The UES Persistence will be assigned to rear guard duty, protecting our supply ships and damaged vessels. Their unique capabilities will be better suited for defensive operations. Lee Hana closed her eyes for a moment. Even facing the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen, they still didn't trust her ship to fight alongside the others. Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin turned to her captain. "Ma'am, should we protest the assignment?" "No," Lee Hana said quietly. "Let them have their perfect battle plan. When it fails, and it will fail, they'll need us more than they realize." The Persistence began moving to its assigned position at the back of the fleet, while the sleek alien warships arranged themselves in precise formations. Everything was calculated, coordinated, elegant. Everything was exactly what the Devourers expected. The first moment of battle was beautiful. 17 different types of energy weapons fired simultaneously across the void, creating a light show that could probably be seen from 3 star systems away. Plasma bolts, laser beams, particle streams, and exotic energy types that humans didn't even have names for all converged on the lead Devourer cube. From her position at the back of the fleet, Captain Lee Hana watched the massive enemy vessel shudder under the impact. Its perfect black surface flickered with energy discharges as the shields absorbed the punishment. For a brief moment, it looked like the combined fleet might actually hurt these things. "First volley successful," reported Commander Oh Shungyun. Over the fleet communications, all weapons showing penetration, Devourer shields at approximately 60% strength. The alien captains were pleased. Their perfect coordination was working exactly as planned. The second coordinated strike hit the cube 30 seconds later. This time, the energy discharges were smaller. The Devourer ship barely shuddered. "Shields holding at 40%, Oh Seung-yun announced, though his voice carried a note of concern. Some weapons showing reduced effectiveness. By the third volley, the enemy cube didn't even flicker. Every single energy beam, no matter how powerful or exotic, simply disappeared into the black hull without causing any damage at all. All weapons ineffective, came the stunned report. The Devourer has adapted to everything we have. That's when the real nightmare began. The enemy cube turned toward the fleet, and Captain Lee could see weapon ports opening along its surface. What came out wasn't energy beams or missiles. It was worse. The Devourer fired back using exact copies of every weapon that had just been used against it. Plasma bolts identical to those from Zephyrian ships struck Zephyrian vessels. Crystalline energy streams hammered crystalline ships. Captain Bei Sunmi's voice crackled over the communications, tight with fear. "This is the ethereal Navy vessel," Moon whisper. "Our shields are failing. The enemy is using our own weapons against us, but somehow they're more powerful." Lee Hana watched in horror as the elegant ethereal ship, a vessel that looked like it was made of living starlight, began to come apart under fire from its own weapon type. The beautiful ship that had mocked the Persistence just days ago was dying. "All ships break formation," Fleet Admiral Thargon ordered. "Scatter and engage independently." But it was too late for careful tactics. More Devourer ships were arriving, each one a different geometric shape, each one perfect and terrifying. As the alien vessels tried to adapt their strategies, the mechanical enemies adapted faster. The hegemony cruiser tried switching to kinetic weapons, old-fashioned bullets and missiles. The first few shots worked. By the fourth shot, the Devourer had learned to stop those too and was firing them back with deadly accuracy. Captain Yoon Ji-won's desperate voice filled the communications channel. "They're learning faster than we can change tactics. Every weapon we use becomes their weapon. How do we fight an enemy that copies everything we do?" Panic was spreading through the fleet like a virus. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours ago were breaking apart under fire from their own weapons, turned against them by an enemy that learned from every attack. From the back of the fleet, the crew of the Persistence watched their allies fall one by one and wondered if their turn was coming next. Half the fleet was gone. Beautiful. Ships that had taken decades to build were now expanding clouds of debris drifting through space. The remaining vessels were in full retreat, their captains screaming orders over communications channels filled with static and panic. Fleet Admiral Thargon's voice cut through the chaos, and for the first time since Lee Hana had known him, the proud alien commander sounded desperate. "UES Persistence, you are authorized to engage the enemy. All other vessels will provide support as able." Captain Lee felt every eye on her bridge turned toward her. This was it. Their moment to either prove themselves or die trying. She looked at her crew, these people who had endured weeks of mockery and insults and saw determination in their faces. "Lieutenant Jang Hyok," she called to her weapons officer, "implement protocol chaos." Jang Hyok's hands moved across his console, and suddenly every screen on the bridge lit up with weapon systems that most ships didn't even carry. "Protocol chaos activated, Captain. All safeties are off. All predictability algorithms are disabled." The Persistence turned toward the nearest Devourer cube, and Lee could almost feel the enemy's sensors trying to analyze their approach. But there was nothing to analyze. The human ship wasn't following any pattern the mechanical minds could understand. "Firing sequence 1, Jang announced, and pressed a button that launched a single tungsten rod from the spinning weapon system. The metal projectile streaked toward the cube at incredible speed. The Devourer's shields absorbed it easily. One hit, catalogued and analyzed. "Firing sequence 2, Zhang said, and this time released a cloud of ball bearings, each one no bigger than a marble but moving fast enough to punch through steel. The enemy's shields flickered, adapting to this new threat. 2 hits, pattern recognition beginning. Firing sequence 3, and now Zhang launched something completely different, a chunk of ice mixed with metal fragments and what appeared to be pieces of broken machinery. Ensign Nam Ji-young watched her, sensor displays with growing excitement. "Captain, the Devourer systems are confused. They're trying to adapt to our weapons, but every shot is completely different from the last one." That was exactly what Lee had hoped for. While other ships fired the same weapons in the same patterns, the Persistence was throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at the enemy. Literally, Zhang's next shot included actual kitchen equipment. From the mess hall, accelerated to destructive speeds by the spinning launch system. "Modular armor system activated," reported Chief Engineer Choi Dae-ho. As they watched, damaged sections of the ship's hull began ejecting themselves into space, while new plates moved into position. The Persistence was changing its shape even as it fought, making it impossible for the enemy to predict where its vital systems were located. The Devourer cube was still trying to figure out what to do when Yang fired his next volley, a mixture of standard missiles, chunks of asteroid rock, and several dozen dinner trays from the cafeteria. The enemy's perfect geometric form actually seemed to hesitate, its adaptive systems overwhelmed by weapons that made no logical sense. "They can't adapt to chaos," Nam Ji-young reported with something like wonder in her voice. "Their systems are designed to find patterns, but we're not giving them any patterns to find." For the first time in this battle, it was the enemy that seemed confused instead of the humans. What happened next would have made any military academy instructor faint with horror. Lieutenant Ko Min-jae had taken over the weapons systems from Zhang Hyuk, and she was treating the Persistence's arsenal like a mad scientist treats a laboratory. Her fingers flew across controls that were never meant to be used together, combining systems in ways that violated every safety regulation ever written. "Captain, I'm mixing the plasma conduits with the kinetic launchers," she announced cheerfully, as if she was talking about making a sandwich. "The computer says this will cause a catastrophic explosion." "Will it?" Lee Hana asked. "Probably not," Ko replied. "And if it does, at least it'll be interesting." She pressed the firing button, and instead of an explosion, the Persistence launched what could only be described as flaming chunks of metal wrapped in plasma energy. The makeshift projectiles hit the Devourer cube and burned through its hull like angry hornets through paper. The enemy ship's systems tried desperately to categorize this new weapon type. Was it kinetic? Was it energy? Was it some kind of exotic matter they'd never encountered? While the mechanical minds debated, more holes appeared in their hull. "Weapons Officer Ko," came Chief Engineer Choi Dae-ho's voice over the intercom. "What did you just do to my plasma systems?" "Made them better," Ko replied, already working on her next creation. This time, she was connecting the missile launchers to the ship's waste disposal system. "Captain, permission to fire garbage at the enemy?" Any sane military officer would have said no. Captain Lee said, "Make it count." The next volley consisted of compressed trash, broken furniture, and what appeared to be several weeks' worth of dirty laundry, all accelerated to ridiculous speeds by the spinning launch system. To make it even more absurd, Ko had somehow managed to make the garbage glow with leftover energy from the plasma systems. The Devourer cube actually stopped moving. Its perfect adaptive algorithms, designed by the most advanced mechanical civilization in the galaxy, had just been attacked by glowing space garbage and had no idea how to respond. But Ko Min-jae wasn't finished. She turned to Ensign Nam. "Ji-young at the sensors station. Can you make the targeting computer drunk?" "Excuse me," Nam replied. "The AI keeps trying to aim perfectly. Can you make it aim badly on purpose, randomly badly?" Nam's eyes lit up with understanding. She dove into the ship's computer systems, deliberately introducing errors into the targeting algorithms. "Done. The computer now thinks it's having a very bad day." The results were immediate and devastating. Instead of precise shots aimed at optimal targets, the Persistence began firing in seemingly random directions. Some shots missed completely. Others hit parts of the enemy ships that conventional wisdom said weren't worth targeting. A few shots somehow managed to ricochet off one Devourer vessel and hit another. The mechanical enemies were completely baffled. Their perfect mathematical minds couldn't comprehend weapons that were deliberately fired incorrectly, or attacks that succeeded, precisely because they were supposed to fail. Ko Min-jae was having the time of her life. She'd connected the ship's coffee machine to the weapons systems and was now launching caffeine-enhanced projectiles. She'd turned the exercise equipment into kinetic weapons. She'd even figured out how to weaponize the ship's automated announcements, broadcasting terrible elevator music at frequencies that somehow disrupted Devourer communication systems. The first Devourer cube, overwhelmed by attacks it couldn't understand or adapt to, simply stopped working and began drifting through space like a very large, very expensive paperweight. The moment everything changed came when Captain Lim Soyeon of the hegemony cruiser Starfall watched the Persistence destroy its third Devourer cube, using what appeared to be weaponized kitchen appliances and bad music. Her own ship was in terrible shape. The elegant energy weapons that had been the pride of her civilization were completely useless. The Devourers had adapted to them hours ago. Her ammunition stores were nearly empty. By every rule of military engagement, she should have been retreating to regroup and resupply. Instead, she did something that would have gotten her court-martialed under normal circumstances. "All crew brace for impact," she announced over her ship's intercom. "We're going to ram that pyramid thing." Her bridge crew stared at her in shock. The hegemony had been building starships for over 2,000 years. They were artists of space, combat, masters of precision and elegance. They did not ram things like barbarians. "Captain," her first officer said carefully, "ramming is not a recognized hegemony tactic." "It is now," Lim replied and pushed the engines to maximum power. The Starfall, a ship designed to dance through space like a ballet performer, crashed into the Devourer pyramid like a battering ram. The impact sent shockwaves through both vessels, but something amazing happened. The enemy ship crumpled. Its perfect geometric form buckled and twisted, completely unprepared for such a crude, direct attack. "Holy stars," breathed Captain Velnara of the crystalline ship Harmony. That actually worked. She looked at her own weapon systems, still, trying to fire in the precise calculated patterns her people had perfected over millennia. The shots were beautiful, perfectly aimed, completely predictable, and completely useless against enemies that adapted to everything logical. "Weapons officer," she said slowly, "I want you to forget everything you learned in military academy." "Ma'am?" "Fire. Randomly. Don't aim, don't think, just pull triggers and see what happens." The Harmony's next volley looked like it was fired by a ship having a nervous breakdown. Energy beams went in every direction, some missing their targets completely, others hitting parts of Devourer ships that served no apparent purpose. One beam somehow managed to bounce off a piece of space debris and hit an enemy vessel from behind. And it worked. The Devourer ships, designed to counter systematic attacks, had no idea how to handle random chaos. Admiral Kethvar, the same Zephyrian, who had mocked the Persistence as a rust bucket, watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. His own ship had been running on backup power for the past hour, its main weapons completely ineffective against enemies that had learned to counter everything his civilization could throw at them. "Tactical officer," he said, his four eyes fixed. On the human ship, as it launched what appeared to be a washing machine at a Devourer sphere, "What supplies do we have in our cargo holds?" "Sir, we have medical supplies, spare parts, food rations, cleaning equipment. Load it all into the torpedo tubes," Kethvar ordered. "If the humans can fight with garbage, so can we." Within minutes, the Zephyrian destroyer was firing medical equipment, spare hull plates and food containers at the enemy. The Devourer's perfect adaptive systems tried desperately to categorize attacks that made no sense whatsoever. Across the battlefield, ship after ship abandoned thousands of years of military tradition. Ethereal vessels began firing in patterns that resembled abstract art rather than tactical formations. Collective ships started using their tractor beams to throw space debris at enemies. Even the normally conservative Fleet Admiral Thargon ordered his flagship to use its shuttle bays as improvised catapults. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had just learned warfare from humans, and the lesson was simple. Sometimes the best way to win is to stop trying to make sense. The moment when the Devourer fleet began to retreat was almost anticlimactic. These mechanical monsters that had consumed 17 star systems, these perfect geometric forms that had adapted to every logical weapon in the galaxy, simply gave up. One by one, the surviving enemy ships turned away from the battle and disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of 60% of their armada. For several long minutes, nobody on any ship quite believed it was over. The communications channels were silent, except for the soft hum of engines and the occasional crackle of damaged equipment. Then Captain Lim Soyun's voice broke the silence. Did we just win a battle by throwing kitchen equipment at them? The laughter that followed could probably be heard on 3 different star systems. It started with the human crew of the Persistence, spread to the hegemony ships, and soon every surviving vessel in the fleet was filled with the sound of crews who couldn't quite believe they were still alive. On the bridge of the Persistence, Lieutenant Ko Min-jae was staring at her weapons console in amazement. Captain, I think I accidentally connected the coffee machine to the main computer. The ship is now running on caffeine. Captain Lee Hana was about to respond when Fleet Admiral Thargon's personal shuttle requested permission to dock. 20 minutes later, the tall, imposing alien commander was standing on her bridge, looking around at the jury-rigged systems and improvised weapons with something that might have been respect. Captain Lee, he said formally, I owe you an apology. We all do. Lee felt her crew straighten behind her. This was the same alien who had assigned them to rear guard duty, who had dismissed their ship as primitive and crude. Admiral, there's no need, she began, but Thargon held up a hand. No, there is every need. We looked at your ship and saw chaos. We saw poor construction, inadequate systems, primitive methods. What we failed to see was that all of it was deliberate. Commander Park Min-ho, who had endured weeks of embarrassing questions about human engineering, stepped forward. Sir? Thargon gestured at the spinning weapon system, still slowly rotating even after the battle. This isn't random construction. This is a ship specifically designed to be unpredictable. Every flaw we mocked was actually a feature. The mismatched armor allows rapid battlefield repairs. The crude welding contains nanotechnology we don't possess. The spinning launcher can fire anything as a weapon. Chief Engineer Choi Dae-ho grinned. Took you long enough to figure it out. The question is, Thargon continued, how did humans know to build a ship like this? How did you know that rigid tactics and predictable weapons would fail against the Devourers? Captain Lee exchanged glances with her crew. We didn't know about the Devourers specifically, but humans have learned something important over the centuries. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to refuse to solve it the expected way. Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin nodded. We built the Persistence to fight enemies we couldn't predict by making ourselves unpredictable first. Admiral Thargon looked around the bridge again, seeing it with new eyes. The ship that had seemed like a collection of mistakes and compromises was actually something far more sophisticated. A deliberate embrace of controlled chaos, a weapon system designed to succeed by rejecting conventional wisdom. The galaxy's dumbest warship, he said quietly, using the phrase that had followed the Persistence for weeks. Sir? Lee asked. That's what we called you. The galaxy's dumbest warship. We were wrong. This might be the smartest ship any of us have ever seen. Outside the viewports, the stars looked a little brighter, and the galaxy felt a little safer.